Chapter 1. The Cameraman Who Wasn't Looking for Anything. Kieran Doyle, 34, an electrician from Dublin, wasn't searching for a mystery. He drove up from Dublin that morning for one reason only. The forecast promised a clear sky and calm sea, perfect for drone footage. He'd done this 100 times. Fly the drone along the coast, capture a few minutes of sunset, post it to Instagram, drive home. A normal hobby, a normal evening. But the footage from that night would become one of the most closely examined amateur videos in years. On the screen, a massive basalt block the size of a truck, weighing around 20 tons, slowly swinging open like a hinged door. Behind it, dense, absolute darkness. The movement was smooth, deliberate, almost mechanical. 11 seconds. Then the block sealed shut again. Perfectly. No crack. No seam. If you had walked past 1 minute later, you would have seen nothing but ordinary basalt. You wouldn't have stopped. You wouldn't have known. Doyle almost didn't post the clip. He thought the drone had glitched, or the light had tricked the lens. But he rewatched it 6 times in the car, and every time, the darkness behind the stone still shifted. Something was open back there. Something real. He posted the clip that night. By morning, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. And that was the moment this story stopped belonging to one electrician. Chapter 2. The woman who spent 15 years studying this stretch of stone. Among the dozens of calls, one came from a senior geologist, we'll call her Dr. Reyes, at the request of those involved who wished to remain anonymous. She wasn't the type to chase viral videos. She had published dozens of peer-reviewed papers on the basalt structures of the North Atlantic over 15 years. She had a serious career to protect. The first time she watched the clip, she nearly dismissed it. Then she watched it a second time. The third. Either this footage breaks every rule of geology I know, she told a colleague, or it's the most sophisticated hoax I've ever seen. She drove to the site the very next morning to find out which. What is Giant's Causeway if you don't already know? A stretch of northern Irish coastline made of roughly 40,000 interlocking hexagonal basalt columns, fitted together with near-perfect precision. The result of a volcanic eruption 60 million years ago, when lava hotter than 2,000 degree F flooded a valley and cooled into those strange geometric pillars. Local legend says the giant Finn McCool built them as a bridge to Scotland. A beautiful story. But what was actually sealed inside is an entirely different one. In all the centuries of study, in every geological survey ever conducted, no one had ever detected a hollow space within that rock. No ancient text mentions a hidden door. No legend even hints at one. Dr. Reyes herself had personally scanned that stretch of coastline dozens of times over her career, and every time the result was solid stone. Until Kieran Doyle's drone captured that. What her ground-penetrating radar found next was enough to make 2 members of her original research team resign within the first week. Chapter 3. The Room That Should Not Exist. Dr. Reyes set up the ground-penetrating radar at the exact coordinates from Doyle's footage early the next morning. Gray sky, a cutting wind off the Atlantic. She calibrated the sensors, aimed the antenna at the rock face, began the scan, and waited for the image to form. What appeared on the screen froze her in place. She stood there, eyes locked on the display, for nearly 2 minutes without speaking. Her field assistant later said he thought the equipment had failed, because she didn't react at all. No notes, no adjustments, just staring. This is what the radar screen showed. A massive hollow chamber, hidden inside what every geologist on Earth had believed was completely solid basalt. 12 feet deep. 26 feet wide. A room sealed behind volcanic rock, with no entrance and no exit that any instrument had ever detected. That alone was impossible. But what was inside the room made the hollow space itself a secondary detail. 7 humanoid figures, standing upright in the darkness, each between 7 and 8 feet tall, arranged in a precise formation spaced exactly 4-5 feet apart. And every one of them facing the stone door. Not random, not collapsed, not scattered like washed-up remains, standing in ranks, looking toward the exit, The geometric precision of that formation was the part no natural process could explain. Bodies do not fall into neat geometric rows. Bodies do not arrange themselves into evenly spaced lines over 60 million years. This was not a fossil bed. This was an arrangement. And here is the critical point. Basalt does not form around upright objects. It is not sedimentary rock that slowly accumulates over time. Basalt is cooled lava. The only way those 7 figures could be inside the stone is if they were already in position while the lava was still liquid. Still hotter than 2,000 degrees. Meaning they had been sealed there since the eruption that created the Giant's Causeway 60 million years ago. Modern humans would not appear for another 59.7 million years. Whatever is standing in that formation, one senior researcher later admitted off the record, was already there before anything resembling a person ever walked this planet, before the first primates, before the first upright step on a savanna that did not yet exist. Chapter 4. They are not stone. The next morning, a geophysicist, call him Dr. Alder, arrived from Belfast with more advanced scanning equipment. His specialty was subsurface imaging, reading what lies buried under rock, soil, and seabed. He had mapped underground river systems across northern Europe. People expected him to be the voice of reason in this story. 20 minutes into the scan, his hands were shaking so badly he had to set the tablet down. His high-resolution scanner showed that the 7 figures were not solid stone. They were hollow shells, thin outer casings, empty interiors, like cocoons, like husks. Something in the walls of each shell reflected the scan signal in a way completely unlike any known geological material. As if something had once lived inside each one, or perhaps still did. The material of the shells could not be identified. Whatever it was, it should not have survived contact with molten lava. No organic material can withstand those temperatures. No synthetic material should either, especially not for that length of time under that pressure. Yet there they remained, intact, structurally sound, inside rock that had once been liquid fire when dinosaurs had not yet gone extinct. Within 48 hours, the authorities were quietly notified. Encrypted emails, closed-door meetings, and the site Dr. Reyes had spent her career studying was about to be taken out of her hands. Chapter 5. How a discovery is shut down. An environmental agency team arrived within 48 hours and issued a public statement almost immediately. The drone footage was simply light reflecting off wet basalt. No hollow chamber existed. No anomalies had been detected. Everything was normal. The public could rest easy. But here was the problem. The primary consulting expert they had hired to verify the site, Dr. Reyes herself, refused to sign the report. She was shown the draft. She read it twice. She pushed it back across the table without picking up a pen. Colleagues present at the site later said she reviewed the raw sonar data one final time on her laptop, her face pale, closed the screen, and submitted her resignation the following week. Her letter was only 4 sentences long. The last one, "I have seen enough." The agency did not waste time after that. They erected steel barriers and yellow warning signs around the entire section of cliff. Official reason: coastal erosion, rockfall risk, standard safety closure. If you walk past those barriers today, a park ranger will tell you exactly that story without blinking. A good explanation. Simple. Boring. The kind of reason no one bothers to question further. But anyone who has seen those scans knows precisely why this stretch of coastline was suddenly closed. And what happened next confirmed it. Chapter 6. One of them was gone. Before the research team was formally ordered to leave the area, Dr. Reyes returned to the site one last time, for days after the first scan. Standard procedure. Run a comparative scan. Confirm the data. She expected everything to look identical. She hoped it would. She wanted to believe the first scan had been a glitch. When the new image appeared on the screen, she gripped the edge of the equipment case to stay upright. One of the 7 figures was gone. Only 6 remained. The stone door had never opened. Not once. Doyle, sensing the importance of the footage he had captured from the start, had installed a motion sensor camera aimed directly at the rock face the very next day. It ran continuously 24 hours a day for 4 days. The footage showed zero external movement, not a single vibration. The door remained sealed the entire time. Yet inside that locked chamber, a 7-foot humanoid figure had simply vanished. No dust, no tunnel, no trace of any kind. The team examined every inch of the chamber walls on the scans. No exit, no secondary cracks, nothing. And this is what made the room fall silent. The remaining 6 did not react. They did not scatter. They did not change formation. They simply stood there in the dark, continuing to face the door, as if the departure of the 7th had been expected. As if it had simply been the first to leave. Chapter 7. They are warm. And they have a heartbeat. A thermal imaging specialist, call her Dr. Muir, was brought in to check whether any volcanic heat source or groundwater could explain the anomalous readings. Straightforward diagnostic work. She expected to find a warm spring, a magma pocket. Something mundane, something that could be explained. Cold March morning. Air temperature 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The rock face equally cold. Normal in every way. Then she pointed the thermal camera at the location of the chamber. The screen flared orange-red. Inside that sealed room, the 6 remaining figures were radiating heat at 99 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not close to human body temperature. That is exactly human core body temperature, the resting temperature of a healthy person. I recalibrated 3 times, swapped both units. Dr. Muir said later. Every single time 99 degrees. Steady. Unmistakable. No geological or thermodynamic mechanism can explain something maintaining that temperature inside cold rock for tens of millions of years. Heat always dissipates. That is not a hypothesis. It is a fundamental law of physics. This is when the first hypothesis collapsed. People had suggested an unusually warm underground water flow. But the data showed something far colder. The temperature was stable, selective, and unrelated to any geothermal source ever recorded in the area. The team also installed vibration sensors to listen for movement beneath the rock surface. What those sensors picked up may be the most unsettling detail in this entire story. A rhythmic pulse repeating every 4-7 seconds. Steady. Never changing. A senior researcher, choosing his words with extreme care, admitted that the rhythm is indistinguishable from a slow heartbeat. Chapter 8. They are moving toward the door. Every 72 hours, when the team ran a new scan, the situation grew worse. The 6 remaining figures were changing position. Not much. Only a few inches each time, almost imperceptible between consecutive scans. But if you lined the scans up side by side over 2 weeks, the movement became undeniable. They were no longer holding their original precise formation. They had drawn closer together and were steadily shifting toward the sealed stone door. Slowly, deliberately, like something waking from a very long sleep, and finally deciding it was time to leave. Not fast, not urgent, just steady. The pace of something with all the time in the world, that has finally chosen to use some of it. Think about what that means. These things had been locked inside volcanic rock since before mammals existed. They had outlasted every species, every civilization that rose and fell on the surface above them. For tens of millions of years, they had not moved. And right now, in our lifetime, they are heading for the exit. Meanwhile, more than 1 million tourists visit the Giant's Causeway every year. Families walk across those black stones with their children, take selfies, listen to guides tell the story of Finn McCool. They have no idea what is actually behind that rock face. Chapter 9. The paper that was blocked. Even after resigning, Dr. Reyes tried to publish her findings. She spent months compiling everything: thermal data, the pulse, the positional shifts, analysis of the shell material. She wrote a formal paper, peer-reviewed by 2 trusted colleagues who confirmed the methodology was sound. The Geological Review Board rejected it immediately. Reason: faulty equipment, flawed methods, insufficient evidence. Case closed. One member of that board later contacted her privately. Off the record, he told her the real reason had nothing to do with her science. No one wanted to deal with the chaos this discovery would cause. If the public learned that biological heat signatures and periodic pulses had been detected inside ancient basalt, it would shake the foundations of everything we think we know about the history of life on Earth. He did not deny her findings. He said that was exactly what made them nervous. He reminded her, without saying it outright, that there are doors which, once opened publicly, cannot be closed again. And some doors are safer kept shut. By April, all monitoring equipment had been quietly removed from the site. Chapter 10. The evidence still exists, but they could not erase everything. Kieran Doyle still keeps the original drone footage on 3 hard drives, stored in 3 separate locations around Dublin. He checks them weekly to make sure the data has not corrupted. The research team, Dr. Reyes, Dr. Alder, Dr. Muir, and at least 2 others each keep personal copies of everything. Sonar, thermal logs, vibration recordings, all stored on encrypted drives in places no agency can access without a court order. The final scan before the equipment was removed showed the 6 figures still moving, still pulsing, still warm. The one nearest the door was only a few feet from the exit, and its pulse registered stronger than the week before. But the question that keeps these researchers awake at night is not about the 6 remaining inside. It is about the 7th, the one that left. It did not break the rock. It did not open the door. It left no tunnel, no crack, not a single grain of dust displaced. Simply was no longer there. So where is it now? Somewhere under the Atlantic, moving through a system of caves that stretches for miles beneath the Irish seabed? Hidden in an unexplored sea cave along the coast? Inside another rock face no one has thought to scan? Or somewhere else entirely? Under a city inside a mountain, moving through spaces we have never thought to search? Outro. Even if you discard every contested detail in this story, even if you keep only what can be publicly verified, the drone footage still exists. The 4-day comparative scans remain internal records at a public university. The barriers around that stretch of coastline are still standing, and the park rangers still refuse to give a detailed explanation for the closure. Something at this site is being managed by policy, not by scientific curiosity, and that policy is silence. If those 6 figures are what the scans suggest, then everything from the timeline of intelligent life on Earth to the real meaning behind the legend of Finn McCool needs to be reconsidered from the beginning. Ireland is not just sitting on a strange geological formation. Ireland may be sitting on a tomb, or a nursery, or a docking bay, or something else for which we do not yet have a name. Do you think those 6 figures are still behind the door? Or has someone else already gotten out? Leave your prediction in the comments. And if you want to know the moment new evidence appears on this story, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is far from over.